Hey guys, welcome back to more r/malicious compliance stories. In this video, a new dumb Karen boss refuses to pay my salary, claiming I am useless, but I actually run the entire place. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the video. And the first one is titled, "My boss is an absolute psycho." So I'm a new attorney, I've been practicing for 6 months and I've been with the same firm for 6 months. The pay is great and higher than most other jobs available to someone with my experience, and my boss prides herself on being a mentor to new attorneys. However, my boss has something of a reputation in my community. In the last year she has lost 4 attorneys who all quit and walked off. This is a small firm, so losing 4 was a huge blow. Of the attorneys who quit, my boss has harassed all of them. She sued the first one for her shoes and she filed ethics complaints against her, and she's getting ready to sue her again. The second one to quit, my boss sued to claw back her bonus pay. The third one to quit was a doozy. The third one to quit and took her client files with her. My boss lodged multiple ethics complaints against her, filed criminal complaints against her, and sued her. The third one to quit had to go into deep hiding at her new firm because my boss and her husband called and harassed her constantly. Despite the drama with the former employees, I have not felt much of it until recently. My boss has not been a great boss, but she has made an effort to mentor me. She answers my questions and occasionally looks over my work. There are issues though. She does not believe in hiring paralegals or trained legal professionals, so we just have generic staff. Of our staff, we have gone through 8 since I started, including one who was fired after being drunk on the job. As a result, our work is often not done on time, or it is sloppy. My boss also has a philosophy of never firing a bad client. This has become a big issue in the firm. We most recently had a client with a long history of fraud. My boss had me draft a motion and affidavit, which the other side pointed out was entirely fraudulent the day before the motion hearing. We had to withdraw the motion and apologize to the court. The client then stiffed us on our bill. My boss still won't let us fire him, and now I have to work on his case for free. Despite all this, I've stuck with it until now, the wall punching incident. So my boss and her husband brought a criminal detective into the office to talk about one of the former attorneys. I could hear them across the wall. They were screaming and swearing at the detective about how the former employee is a effing spy. I then heard a loud thump and saw my boss's husband shake his bruised fist. Basically, the dude put his fist through a wall. It was frightening to watch. That same night, a rival firm reached out to me unsolicited. They have several of the former attorneys from my firm, and they have offered me a job as well. Actual paralegal, mentoring, and no one puts their fist through drywall. I feel guilty about leaving my firm and being disloyal, but I think I need to go for my own safety. This stuff is wild. And a user in the comments said, hard to believe all of these horribles could show themselves from one person in such a short period of time. Fodder worthy of 60 minutes or similar investigative/ambush shows. See if you can monetize this. Additional thoughts: this pattern of behavior does not appear suddenly, except one scenario I've seen before below. There should be more examples over a longer period of time. Have you seen or heard anything? So the out of the blue situation was a relatively new bad habit. It does not smell like booze, something else maybe. Said enough. OP replied, there were other signs, but I either ignored them or tried to look through rose-tinted glasses. Like, we were not allowed to attend the CLEs for our area of law because something happened between my boss and another firm, and she ended up being investigated for trust account violations. I don't think she was publicly disciplined, but she has complained about how it cost her hundreds of thousands to defend against. There were signs like that. Update: I'm here with an update, and the update is I start my new job next week. Sadly, I'm not going with the rival firm that tried to poach me. Shortly after the rival firm reached out to me, my boss sued one of the attorneys at that firm too. My boss instructed every person at the firm to attend the hearings for the former attorney and stare at them. I was conveniently on vacation when the first hearing happened, but my boss crowed about her efforts against the former attorney to the entire firm. After the former attorney got sued, the rival firm entirely ghosted me and wouldn't return my email. My boss also told me that she was suing the entire rival firm, so that could be part of why they ghosted. However, I did immediately begin applying for new jobs. I had 3 offers fairly quickly, and 2 of the firms even got into a bidding match over me. The legal community in the area I practice has been remarkably kind to me. They have all told me that I'm smart to escape the toxic firm, and they are offered to help me however I can. I ended up taking a job with a firm in my practice area, and the job comes with a nice raise. I did not end up walking out of my job at toxic firm though. Given what happened to the last attorneys, I wanted to try to avoid getting sued and harassed, so basically I gave proper notice, notified my clients, and I was gracious to my employer. The effort was a bit in vain. No one at toxic firm spoke to me after I put in notice, and my boss went from weeping about my loss to screaming at me about it. She also blew up my phone with text messages after I left until I blocked her. All in all though, quitting toxic firm did not go as bad as I thought, and I'm so glad to start fresh. Thank you to everyone who commented and liked my original post. I read every comment and I took it to heart. I'm actively working to be better at advocating for myself, and I'm looking into therapy under my new and improved health insurance. I'm excited to have a fresh start, and to boot, almost all of my clients are leaving toxic firm and are coming with me. I call that a success. And some people in the comments said, "Oh my god, how insane, I'm so glad you got out of there, and cheers to the bar for rallying around you and your colleagues and actively trying to get you out. By the way, you need to file a bar complaint ASAP, this is absolutely unacceptable. Also, in your OG post, I noticed you kept saying husband but not partner. Is he an attorney? Or just a mobster slash bodyguard to punch employees into submission?" OP replied, "Thank you." One of the attorneys I spoke to also helped me get set up with an ethics attorney in my field. I'm working with him to figure out the next steps, especially if my former boss does something crazy. As for my OG post, toxic former boss is married to the business manager who is not an attorney. He also is not allowed in the office very often because he scares the employees. And yeah, Ripe Stars, if you ever got revenge or malicious compliance on an awful boss, then I would love to hear your story in the comments or on r/Ripe Stories on Reddit, which is perfect for posting longer stories that might reappear in a video if you want. The next one is titled, "New Dumb Karen Boss Refuses to Pay My Salary Because I Am Useless, However, I Run the Place." So I spent 15 years working with the same company, and over time had to watch a lot of people come and go as life happens and they get new jobs or fired for not being the best workers in the world. Despite my role being in the marketing department where I'm a supervisor, I've learned a lot during my time. Filling in or jumping into other roles where I had to learn things on the spot made me a bit of a utility player for the company. Don't get me wrong, marketing is still where I belong, but I'm sure my boss liked the fact that if there was a big project or a lot of people out, he could put me somewhere else for a few days and things would be fine. Now, if my boss ended up staying in his position, I wouldn't have any story to tell you, but he chose to step down, and instead of hiring somebody within the company to take his place, he hired somebody totally new. I did not mind it, I just knew it might be harder to catch them up to speed, but she seemed to know a lot when she came. She did not look like what a Karen would be, since she wore nice suits and looked just very put together and like a boss would. It didn't take long before her personality came out though, and everybody was calling her Karen behind her back. One of the first things she did was try to save money for the company by firing people who either did not have set contracts or whose contracts were ending soon. I will say that I'm sure she had a reason to who she picked, and it had nothing to do with performance. She was keeping all the white employees and getting rid of anybody of color. Being a person of color, I was a little bit worried about what she might do next after she gets over her firing spree. Before I can get to that though, I need to talk about the state the entire place was in because of the changes she was making and how many people she was firing. The HR department in particular was a mess because she had somehow gotten rid of everybody aside from 3 people who had only been working there for a couple months. She was not paying attention to what she was doing, and nobody was prepared to lose so many members of their teams. Talking from my own department, we had been working on a new marketing campaign, but she had fired one of the key people working on it and then decided to factory reset their computer without checking with anybody. That computer had an early stage model he hadn't had a chance to send to anybody yet. He did back it up to his work account, which she also made sure got erased the moment he was fired. Hearing that it wasn't gonna happen on schedule because of that, Karen got extremely angry and defensive. There were other slowdowns with projects, but that example is hopefully enough to paint the picture that she does not know what she was doing and seemed to just want to show that she had power and that she was a racist. This continued for weeks and everybody was extremely stressed out, and that was when I had my own one-on-one meeting with her. Now, I had a contract, but when the old boss left, what I didn't know was he sold the company to Karen. And in my contract, a new owner is allowed to alter my contract because they were not the ones that agreed to it. I knew that she was up to something right away because she had just put the contract in front of me and was rushing me to sign it right away. Luckily for me, I refused and made sure that I was reading it very carefully, especially the parts about contract length, salary and role. Those, in my opinion, are key to look at, and I was glad I did, because under role she had put intern and under pay she had put nothing. She was trying to make me an unpaid intern and expected me to stick around and do the exact same job. Also, I have no clue if you can even contract an intern or if she was just doing whatever she wanted. At this point I was beyond angry, and I knew I was not gonna sign any contract with her, even if she changed it. Me, are you trying to play me for a fool? Karen, how dare you speak to me like that? Me, you're trying to get me to sign this. It says intern and 0 pay. Karen, you're lucky to still be here at all. You people just want everything handed to you without doing any work. Me, first of all, that's extremely offensive, and second of all, what the hell are you talking about? Karen, you just have all of these excuses why the work is gonna be delayed. Meanwhile, I've seen you wandering around other places you don't belong to socialize and waste time. Me, the only time I go to other places is on my lunch break. And what I've been doing in HR during my lunch is trying to help the people working there, because they are so new, they don't even know what they are doing. There's nobody experienced there. If there was, they would have known somebody should be here for a new contract signing. Karen, now you're telling me how to run my company? Me, what I'm telling you is that you came in here and made all of these changes without thinking about the consequences. Every single department is behind because you clearly don't know what you're doing. You're going to disrespect me and then want me to offer you more money for your job? You're lucky if I don't fire you. Me, I'm not signing that new contract. Karen, you don't deserve any money. You're a useless, racist slur, monkey that has 0 value for the company. If you would be gone tomorrow, nobody would notice a difference, you complete idiot. I then said, either pay me for the correct job or your refusal to give me a contract is you firing me. I left, and I knew damn well she didn't want to say that I was fired to try and avoid giving me unemployment. It did not work, so at least Karen had to pay me while I could go and find new work. I don't want to come off condescending or anything, but I knew leaving was gonna cause an even bigger crack in the collapsing company. I was getting calls from people thinking I was sick or something, but I had to explain that Karen fired me. From what I gathered, some projects had to get halted altogether, and the place was worse off than ever. Apparently, Karen hired a replacement for me and a few other positions that all were the same type of people. White, but also young and not prepared at all for the type of work they were gonna be thrown into. They were lost and confused with not many people to train and teach them what they had to do. According to Karen, the look was good for the company. I'm not patient and didn't want to let karma take its time working on destroying the company. No, I needed a personal touch of going after Karen myself, and I knew that she was gonna get in trouble. I hired a lawyer and explained that Karen refused to give me a new contract because of the color of my skin. I even managed to get some other ex-employees to talk to the lawyer, and they all said similar stories. Her saying something offhandedly racist and then offering us contracts for 0 to pay. The lawyer could smell the money on this one and was ready to help us take Karen down from the outside. Even though it seemed she was taking her own company down from the inside, from the sounds of it. And well, it turns out that I was running the place more than I thought, since me leaving really was the thing that got the boulder moving down the hill. The company and Karen were now being sued by all of us, and she was not taking any of it seriously. We got the courts to send people to check out the company and see how many rules she was actually breaking within the company, and it turns out she was cutting lunch breaks, scamming people into lower paying contracts, etc. Keep in mind, for a company having your own secured server to work on is very important. I'm sure she got in trouble for all of that, but I'm gonna start to wrap things up here and talk about our lawsuit against her. She was forced to try and explain in court to a judge why she fired everybody that was a person of color. She kept saying that the work we did was useless, and she did not fire us and offered us a new job that none of us wanted to take. Now, I didn't do this, but one of the other employees actually took a photo of the contract and was able to show it to the court, compared to their old one showing that she was trying to scam people into taking little to no money and to do the same high-ranking job and getting called an intern at the same time. The court agreed that all of us were given unfair dismissals. Now, normally, a boss can fire whoever as long as they don't have a valid contract. However, due to the fact that she was doing it because of race meant that she was going against the law. In this country, we have rules saying that you cannot fire or not hire somebody based on their race or gender or anything like that, and she was in some serious trouble and now going to owe all of us a lot more money than we were going to get from unemployment. Between her bad business strategies, or well, due to not having any, plus the investigation, she was forced to shut down the company due to bankruptcy. She had spent all of that money to buy a company just to run it into the ground and ruin it. I think the only person that really got away with no harm done was the old boss that had sold it. I also know that if he heard about what happened, he felt horrible for selling to Karen in the first place. I managed to get another marketing job in another company, which actually pays more than my old contract, so between that and the money I won, I came out in a pretty good spot after all of this. By the way, I did Google Karen's name today out of pure curiosity and couldn't really find what she was doing anything anymore. I'm happy to think that she will never run a company again after what I did to her. Maybe that sounds a little bit too petty, but I have zero sympathy for a person like her. She could have gotten rich from the company if she did not let her personal bias screw her over at the end of the day. It was her fault, I just helped move things along a little bit faster. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. So here in Hawaii we have koa trees, and while I think they might be in a couple other places, this is basically the single place to see them on this scale. Because of that, they are seen as pretty rare trees in the world, and the worth of them is huge. If you want to get koa tree lumber to make something, you need to have a big budget. Now, what does the history of a tree have to do with anything? This is not a subreddit for talking about trees, but instead talking about how my neighbor is a complete idiot that I managed to destroy. Now, my neighbor is not that complicated of a person to describe. He is a jerk, and from what I see, there's no rhyme or reason to his behavior. The other thing I want to make clear is that he is not a local, which means he does not really fit in well, and also does not know things that are common knowledge like koa trees. Most of what he does, honestly, is complain about how things are too expensive here and how the people don't act American enough for his liking. For the first thing, yes, the cost of living here has been rising like crazy, to the point that even natives are leaving because they cannot afford it. Any research before he moved though would have told him that this is not a cheap place to live and the people are basically a different ethnicity. Moving to Hawaii might as well be like moving to a foreign country because of all the differences. Instead of doing anything intelligent like moving back where he came from or just sucking it up, he complains constantly. Mainly about me as his neighbor and using it as an excuse to let off some steam. The biggest issue of them all to him is that my property has a ton of koa trees and he doesn't like it. Unlike other matters that were so trivial I cannot remember, he felt like this needed to be something urgent and worth screaming about. Neighbor, you know what I hate the most about this stupid place? Looking over to your property every single day and seeing all of those ugly trees. Me, it's a pretty common tree to have here. If you walk through stores, you can see the stuff made from it sells for the most. Neighbor, don't give me that crap. This is just an island trick to make tourists lose their money. This is all you people want to do anyway. Take hard-earned money without doing a damn thing to earn it. Me, it doesn't matter because they are my trees and they don't affect you. Neighbor, I'm the one that needs to look at them though. I expected something like palm trees and paradise and instead I got this. Me, the entire state is not just the resorts. I also don't care what you expected of moving here, but I'm sure where you came from, it was also considered disrespectful to yell and fight with your neighbor over nothing. I then walked away from him because I don't know what I would have done otherwise. The last thing I needed was for him to go on one of his rants about how white America was better and just all of that crap. I don't play those kind of games with people because there's no winning anything aside from a headache. My neighbor decided to take the issue into his own hands and he hired a company to get rid of my koa trees on half of my property. He sold them to that company too, so he got a good amount of money from those trees that he wasn't expecting. And actually he was sneaky about it too and waited until I was at work for them to come and do it. So now I don't really blame the company because I found out later he had fake papers saying the property line was in a different spot, meaning he owned the property they removed the trees from. I was furious about the whole thing and telling him off only to get him laughing. He said that if I was a smart American, I would understand the law and that I was not gonna win against him. He really felt like he would just win because he was white and they would side with him. The court though, in Hawaii that would be racist against a Hawaiian. That is some logic on his part and I was clearly dealing with a strategic genius that I was never gonna beat in the first place. Or he was just a complete moron that I would wipe the floor with easily in court. So I got a lawyer and explained the entire situation and filed a lawsuit against him. I don't know if he told his lawyer the entire truth, but he was probably told keeping this thing out of trial would be in his best interest. We started with attempting to get an arbitrator to help settle things out. I was asking for all the money the company gave him for the trees. He cut down 10, which meant he cut down $600,000 worth of trees. If he had given me that and stayed away from my property, I would not have charges pressed for the trespassing. The making fake documents was between him and the state, so that was not part of this kind of meeting. He denied the trees being worth that much and refused to show any kind of receipt or bank statement for what he made. Instead of saying he got $500 and would give me that. That was a total insult and he was not willing to budge on any negotiation. Keep in mind, I was being fair and from the start could have said F it and took him to court. Clearly the arbitration failed and the thing had to be dragged out until a judge could rule on things. Now the court could force him to show how much money he got, which was what we assumed. He still denied that he should have to give me all of it because it was his retribution. He claimed that the state had taken so much of his money by overcharging him for everything that he deserved a kind of rebate in the form of the sale of my trees. He also tried to claim my trees were poisonous and gave him a rash that put him in the hospital. Finally, he tried to claim that the part of the property belonged to him, which gets back into the forgery issue. A true assessment shows where the line was and that he didn't and never had owned that part of the land. He had to pay me every single cent back for what the trees were worth. I also did press charges for the trespassing since we never could come to a deal. This meant I was getting a restraining order and the trespassing charge was added to the forgery charge. He had to pay me every single cent back for what the trees were worth. Also, I did press charges for the trespassing since we never could come to a deal. This meant I was getting a restraining order and the trespassing charge was added to the forgery charges, along with a charge for destruction of property since you cannot just take down people's trees. He basically went bankrupt, I got a new neighbor, so I guess he either sold the house or the bank foreclosed it or something. I was too happy and relaxed to care about small details like that. I used the money to mainly buy new koa trees that will one day mature to the size of my old ones. Time and patience will be key, but at least I did not lose out on the worth of what he sold. And yeah guys, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. And also check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on Spotify, Amazon, Audible, and other podcast platforms. You will often find exclusive episodes and early access to new content. Furthermore, please check out my Patreon by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or my YouTube membership program for even more exclusive stories. Thank you so much and I will see you again tomorrow.